1 2 1 2. 1 2 1 2. Mic check. Hey, can y'all hear me out there? Hey. Against all odds. 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 Against all odds.
Good morning. Welcome to the Friday edition of the Rise and Grind Morning Show. Man, I hope you guys are excited because we are super amped up for today's show. We've got a lot of topics, a lot of Lions news today. Not so much, by way of NFL news, but there's definitely a lot of Lions topics that we can talk about today. We were going to do wide receiver breakdown today. I'm probably going to save it for the weekend just because we do have so much to get through, and some of these topics are going to take a little bit. So bear with us. We'll get through it. But good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rise and Grind Morning Show. Raffles. Don't miss out on your opportunity. There is a ton of raffle options. I just pinned it in the chat section here. I'll pin it to the comments when we're done. But only $5, man, to get in on Lions jerseys. There's all sorts of stuff in there. There's Kirby Joseph signed football. And that thing's worth over $250. The mini helmet. I mean, this guy could be a Hall of Famer at some point. You know, why wouldn't you want, a piece of memorabilia that could be worth a chunk of change later? And you might win it for $5. It also goes to a great cause, Rockhound Cancer Foundation. Appreciate everybody that's gotten in so far. Do us a favor, like the stream right now. Let's get these ads off right away. If you haven't subscribed, I'm going to ask you why. Again, you come in and listen every day. You watch every day, but you haven't subscribed yet. We need to get to 10,000 subscribers, and then as soon as we do, we're going to be giving away 2 tickets to opening day for the Detroit Lions opener here in 2025. And we're trying to do that on draft night. So we need to get like 1,000 people in the show. We're going to be coming to you live from Radio Row in Green Bay. We are the only Detroit Lions podcast that is credentialed to be in the room, to be doing a podcast next week, Thursday and Friday. So join us, be with us, share it. We'll see you guys next week. But let's get this show kicked off, get the guys in the room here. Gentlemen, good morning. Eric, Riley, how are we?
Good morning. How are you guys?
Good morning.
I'm doing fantastic. I'm going to pull an Eric. How about that?
Mm-hmm. I am every morning, man.
You know, it's good to feel positive energy every day. It doesn't make sense to wake up on the wrong side of the bed. It really doesn't.
Mm-mm.
We try to kick it into full gear here and come with good energy every morning. It's the only way to be, right? It's the only way to be.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that because I always talk about I'm always listening to older episodes, and I actually had that thought the other day. I'm like, man, every morning it's, Eric, how you doing? I'm fantastic. And then usually something about snow.
It's raining today.
Rain today, it sounds like. But yeah, no, I appreciate the enthusiasm. It's Friday. It's last Friday before the draft, so we got to be in good spirits.
Yeah, we're starting to melt all that white stuff that's in my yard and all around the eastern upper peninsula. We have so much snow still.
Well, speaking of melting, man, did the fan base melt down a little bit yesterday.
Yeah.
Transitions.
Wow. And I tell you that you shouldn't be worried at all. I think I'm reading between the tea leaves a little bit, and I've got a good idea of what should happen. But we're going to talk a little bit about why things might be not what they seem. And is Brad Holmes just out there in smoke screen season, wafting the flames, right? Sending the smoke signals out. Yes and no. I mean, Brad Holmes has been so transparent. I think that to his credit, I think a lot of NFL teams, when they listen, they all listen to the press conferences, right? Every single one of them. They have people that's their one job, is to make sure that you get all the information on the other team and what they're doing. And some general managers will swap information, right? Behind the scenes. They're, hey, what do you really know about this guy? And I'll tell you something that I know about that guy. And some of that stuff goes on behind the scenes. We know that to be true. But in this case, I feel like Brad Holmes is so dialed in that he doesn't have to really lead us astray. And he really hasn't. Riley, you brought up something to me the other day on the phone where you said, man, the last year, the year before, you really hit on, a lot of the Lions draft picks. And that was in 2023, where I hit on Jahmyr Gibbs, the trade from 6 to 12, called it spot on, taking Jahmyr Gibbs at 12. I remember I was driving in my truck and it just hit me. I had a call with somebody that I speak to often, and they were kind of telling me a little bit of info and the trade, that the trade was worked on and it was going to happen if certain things happened, which was Devon Witherspoon being taken at 5. So the trade happened. And then it was Bijan, or was it Jahmyr? And like I said, if the Lions were going to be surprised and Bijan was taken before Jahmyr Gibbs, that was going to be the player. And I think it was the player all along. And Bijan was taken. So Jahmyr Gibbs obviously made the most sense. And when I fast forwarded through that draft, I mean, it only made sense to take Jack Campbell. I didn't see it happening in the first round necessarily. I thought it was going to be our first second round pick. I think it was 34. Where we grabbed Sam Laporta, I believe, that year. I would have swapped those two, but they obviously had a better idea. And because of the trades, it kind of screwed some things up anyway. But I hit on the first 5 Lions picks in 2023. I wrote it, back when the old blog was up. So it was out there for everyone to see. It was validated. And then last year, it was Terry and Arnold being picked in the first round. I did say that the Lions would double down, and then they would also take 2 corners in free agency, and they did all of that. And then it was Sione Vaki. He's the only one that made sense to me as a safety. But then when I highlighted a video on him in his offensive play in his first year at Utah playing in the offense, I was like, there's just no way you can keep this guy off the field. The Lions will figure out a way to use him. I still was hardlined he was going to be a safety. And he's not. I mean, he will be at some point, but he's a special teams player that can play both ways. And right now he's being utilized in the running back room. So we get a few things right, I guess is where I'm going with that. And this year might be the hardest draft that I've had to try to figure out, not from a flexibility standpoint or depth standpoint, which positions are best to get in this draft, but simply what the hell is Brad Holmes going to do? Because now this first round has a limited amount of top-tier talent, according to some analysts, but also the final grades that I did last night. And we'll talk about it. Probably in the second hour of the show, we're going to talk about all of that. So anyway, what's happened with you guys this morning? Any big plans for the weekend?
Get packed and ready for the draft.
Well, I wish I could pack up, but yeah, I'll be able to pack up on, finally on probably Monday night or Tuesday morning, but
yeah,
I've been building my boxes. Let's just put it that way. I've been putting all my extra stuff in boxes.
Yeah, I'm going to take my truck in, get it washed, and I went and bought a couple pairs of pants yesterday and that kind of stuff, get all my odds and ends taken care of.
I thought he was going to say went and bought some underwear, like, Eric
No,
doesn't wear underwear, you know what I mean? So it's like,
mine are Detroit Lions underwear. It's the only kind I wear.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. You probably do you got like a Lions toothbrush, Lions socks,
Everything.
like a Lions toaster?
If it doesn't have a Lions logo on it, it doesn't go in my house.
and if it doesn't have one, he slaps one on anyway.
Exactly.
I got to get one on there. Yeah.
I got a sticker ready to go right here. It's ready to go.
Oh man, it's queued up.
Eric was the kid that wrote his name in his underwear when he was a kid, right? And then put the days on it, so you knew which day you could flip it inside out and wear it again. Yeah,
I love it, man.
Yeah, RP says Green Bay toilet paper, man. You know that's and if we run out, you just write on the first strip there, Green Bay sucks, and FTB on the second one, and those are the first 2 pieces you use every morning, right?
You guys both went to Lambeau last year for that game.
Yeah.
Right.
You want to know something funny? When I went to that game, I had forgotten my toothbrush, and they gave me a toothbrush at the hotel, and it was Lions colored toothbrush, and it was like the best cheap little toothbrush ever. Just made my teeth super clean. I was like, this is awesome. I get a Lions toothbrush at the
Eric, you're supposed to change your toothbrush out like every 3 months.
Well, yeah. I only used it for the 2 days that I was in Green Bay.
Yeah. I'm a stickler with I have the automatic toothbrushes, so I have to change those things out often, man. Wow, we're off and running on a different direction this morning, but let's get into it. Speaking about like green and white, Aaron Glenn, man, I knew this. So do you guys remember back when we were talking about Aaron Glenn going to the Jets? Prior to him going to the Jets, I said when he gets there, he's going to have a no-nonsense approach with Aaron Rodgers. And whether Aaron stayed or not, I said that Aaron Glenn was going to cut the bull crap out day one. Aaron Rodgers never even got a day one. And yesterday, I'm reading through this article and I'm just smiling. Like I'm thinking, man, this is just so Aaron Glenn, but it's exactly what the Jets needed. And this is exactly why he's going to be a really great head coach in the NFL. Because he wasn't going to take the approach with Aaron Rodgers and bow down to him because, he's NFL royalty or used to be. Now I think he's just an, NFL thorn. And everyone's probably like, oh, God, it's Aaron Rodgers, coming through the door. And where it used to be like, oh, my goodness, Aaron Rodgers. And, it's changed, but not for Aaron Glenn. He knows what he wants on this team for the New York Jets. And in epic fashion yesterday, not yesterday, but yesterday reading the article, in epic fashion, when he had an opportunity to speak with Aaron Rodgers, first and foremost, let me get this article open. This is coming from Christian Boer, Detroit Lions on SI. And there's multiple other ones. We just chose this one to highlight for today. So Aaron Glenn faced a big decision, right? What am I going to do at quarterback? Well, right away, you guys knew that I knew this wasn't going to happen. Like I did not expect Aaron Rodgers to stay on this team. I thought it would be a very bad fit. It was not going to work for Aaron Glenn. And matter of fact, I think I even said something to the point, we can go back and find the clip, that you didn't want Aaron Glenn to be superseded by Aaron Rodgers. And that the team was going to, look at Aaron Rodgers for direction versus the head coach. I know I said something very similar to that.
You 100% did.
And
Trace also in the chat said this as well.
It's exactly what happened. And it's exactly the conversation. Matter of fact, that Aaron Rodgers even brought up after the fact. So let me go through this a little bit, and then let's get some reactions here. So the article starts out by saying that the former Detroit Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn faced a big decision upon taking over as the head coach of the New York Jets. And I probably should have just thrown this thing up on the screen here. Maybe I can real quick. Sorry, guys. Give me one sec.
No, you're fine. Yeah, Trace said, I remember you saying that. And honestly, when I was reading it yesterday, I had a minute of work, and I was reading the article, and that was my first thought was, I remember talking about that on the morning show here, that you wouldn't want to go from the Lions situation being what it was to that, right? With that quarterback situation.
I remember saying that Aaron Glenn ended his career in Green Bay, and he's going to end his career with the Jets.
Okay, for some reason, I'm in this scene twice. I don't know why. So you know what? I'm not even going to mess with it. I'll have to fix it while we're into another segment. So anyway, it goes on to say that the veteran quarterback Aaron Rodgers, under contract with the Jets, was heading into the offseason, but Aaron Glenn and the new general manager, Darren Muji, not to be confused with Bougie, had the opportunity to decide whether or not to retain him. Now, Glenn and Muji elected to part ways with the future Hall of Famer, and they signed Justin Fields, which I thought that was, again, another perfect move by Glenn and the Jets. The Rodgers remained an unsigned free agent still today. Now, during an appearance on Pat McAfee Thursday, this must have been yesterday, that he explained that he is mulling retirement. Again, another thing that I said was going to happen for Aaron Rodgers this year, that he was going to retire, that he wasn't going to get an opportunity to play. I don't think that anyone's taking a swing on Aaron, especially when he's trying to demand the money that he's trying to demand. And this also obviously shedded some light on the perspective of his final days yesterday on the Pat McAfee show. So after Aaron Glenn's arrival, reading the article here. He says that Rodgers explained that he flew to New York to meet with the new head coach. And according to Rodgers, now take it with a grain of salt, Glenn quickly left the room to get Muji into the room and with him upon the start of their meeting, which if you've ever led a big company, if you've ever been in a power position or a management position, you typically want a second person in the room with you for many reasons, but it's to have corroboration of what happened in the meeting, right? That especially, if it's a man and a woman, vice versa, right? You always want to make sure you have two people in the room. So once he returned with the GM, Rodgers said that Glenn wasted no time getting to the point. And I love this, where he says, quote, he leans to the edge of his seat and goes, "So do you want to play football?" I could just see Glenn saying that. "So do you want to play football?" Just getting all into it. And Aaron responded with, "Yeah, I'm interested." Let me do that again. I could see him doing something like this. "Yeah, I'm interested." Just nonchalant, not giving a shit. And then he said that we were going in different direction at quarterback is what Aaron Glenn responded with. And Aaron says, "I was kind of shocked. Not shocked because I didn't think that was a possibility. Listen, of course, they want to move on. That's totally fine. But shocked because I just flew across the country. You could have told me this on the phone." Could have, should have, maybe not. I kind of like it, being done in person. But Rodgers then explained that Glenn and Muji wanted to consult with him on how to construct the messaging of his release. So they're trying to give him a little bit of respect here. Like, how do you want to go about this? It's a mutual decision. We're not firing you, blah, 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 right? And then he replied, "I don't give a shit about the message." So that just tells you what kind of individual that Aaron Rodgers is right now. He has zero respect for the process. He has zero respect for anybody in a position now. And that's exactly why he's not going to play football in 2025 unless I think that if there's an epic collapse with a team that is playoff bound, you might see Rodgers get an opportunity late in the season. Then there's another quote. Glenn said, quote, "I don't want to be up in front of the room saying something and have guys looking back at you." Aaron said, "What does that even mean? Are you assuming that I would be in the back of the room during a team meeting undermining what you're saying?" That's exactly what I said a couple of months ago, that would be the problem. That Aaron Glenn and Aaron Rodgers are going to butt heads eventually if they're on the same squad, and that Aaron is going to facilitate what he wants and could potentially alienate the team against the coach. Aaron Glenn's smart enough to realize this, obviously wants things done his way, and needs to insert dominance over the team. If you do not have respect and command the respect of the team, that team is not going to play for you. Why do you think Dan Campbell is so successful? He didn't just come in and, pound the guys into the sand and insert his dominance. Yeah, he's an imposing man. Dan Campbell's a big dude. I mean, so that's a little bit dominating in a way, in and of itself. He's an alpha male. Glenn also played football. Like, he's not just, some bum, right? I mean, he's a pretty strong dude. But that's not the point. It's not about going mano a mano in a, fist fight here. It's about inserting your dominance and making sure that the team knows, hey, I'm the leader. This is my team. We're going to do things my way. And so Aaron Glenn did not want to have any of these situations going on that could derail his first season and cause, a bunch of unnecessary problems. Now, I'm speculating on this, but I think that we're pretty close on probably exactly what Aaron Glenn was trying to facilitate here, which is making sure that his roster was going to be his roster, his team was going to be his team, and that he was going to be able to command the respect of his team. Now, there's many different ways of doing that, and I think that Dan Campbell has set the precedent that you can do it from being a positive person and ensuring that everyone does things the right way with a process and a standard. And that's exactly what Aaron Glenn is going to try to do. The standard is the standard, but I'm not going to have somebody in the back of the room trying to undermine what I'm doing. So then Aaron Glenn said there was no pleading like, oh, please have me on the team. I didn't want any part of that, Rodgers said. It was already a debacle. That whole situation was crazy. I think that was a little rogue by the head coach Glenn, because I talked to the GM Muji later about it, and Christopher Johnson called me. What the hell does that mean? You're telling me that Muji and Johnson called you after the meeting and said something that was different? I doubt it. I highly doubt it. But he didn't elaborate, at least according to Boer here in this article. There was no elaboration. So, Eric, I'll start with you. When you read this, what was your initial thoughts of this whole Aaron Glenn, Aaron Rodgers deal?
I just thought, good for you, Aaron Glenn. Stand up for yourself. Get rid of that cancer. He knew he was a cancer. He knew what he did in Green Bay. He knew what he was doing with the Jets. The Jets is his old team. You know, Aaron Glenn played for the Jets. So, of course, him going back to the Jets, he wants them to succeed. So what's the first thing you're going to do when you're a new coach taking over a team with a cancer like Rodgers on it? The first thing you're going to do is cut that cancer off. Yes, it is going to cost you $49 million in dead cap space. Money be damned. It's time to get rid of it. If I was Glenn, I would tell my team, I don't care if I have to go to a rookie undrafted free agent at quarterback. At least this team is my team, and we're going to run it the way the Jets should be ran. And money be damned, we're going to put together the best team we can possibly put together. And we're not going to let one player run this team from now on. This is going to be a team, not individuals. So that's what I would think. And man, this was absolutely hilarious. I watched the whole Pat McAfee episode with Aaron on it, and I just kept giggling the whole time he was talking about it, especially when he said he flew all the way across the country to do this meeting. And then they just basically told him, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. And he got all mad because he had flown all the way across the country. Yeah, but he did say in this little interview that he is willing to take a 1-year deal, and he's willing to play for $10 million. So he's trying to say, I think he's trying to backpedal now, because he's trying to say that he never said he wanted a multi-year deal and that he wanted $40 million a year. And now he's saying he'll play for 1 year for $10 million. So I still don't think even that will help him, unless the Steelers get desperate and can't find a quarterback in this draft. But I think they will.
Riley?
Yeah, the tough thing on that, though, is if imagine if they just text him, hey, man, we're not going to have you. Now he's upset that they didn't have him go out there. It is a little, brash, just straight to the point. But Aaron Glenn knew it's a business transaction. It's you get right to the point. Hey, we don't want you to be the quarterback here of this team. So, yeah, the back and forth. And then for Rodgers to say, well, I don't give a shit about the message. It's like, I'm sure Aaron Glenn knew he was going to say that. He knew he was going to be dismissive of it, but you still say it. You said, all right, I offered, gave you the opportunity here. Obviously, they respect what Rodgers has done for the game. He's an amazing player, but obviously he just passed his prime and still seems to be one of the players that's kind of holding on to, at the time when he went to the Jets, if I were a Jets fan, I would have been excited. Like, all right, we got Aaron Rodgers. Now, if he goes to Pittsburgh or wherever he goes, are you really that excited? It's the name at this point, I feel, and not worth the drama. So agree. Good for Aaron Glenn. Go over there and put the kibosh on it right away. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah, I think that, I don't even really know where the conversation started with him wanting a multi-year $80 million deal, $40 million a year. Honestly, I didn't really care. But that's obviously what came out a couple weeks ago, or during this whole time where, other quarterbacks are moving around the league, and Rodgers is, scrambling to find a team at this point. I mean, obviously the Browns still have an opening, but they couldn't afford, to bring Aaron Rodgers in a multi-year deal anyway. I think that'd be stupid. So you still have Kirk Cousins that's going to need to find a home eventually. I mean, he could just get released, which maybe that's what he wants them to do. The Falcons, maybe that's what he wants that team to do, is just to release him. But at any rate, now that Aaron is saying that he'll play for $10 million, who's going to pick him up? I think for Aaron Rodgers, it's better to sit and wait. Just wait it out. At some point there could be a team this year that needs you to come in and try to wrap up the rest of the season. Let someone do all the work, and then you just go in and do cleanup duty. That's what I would do. It may happen. It may not. Every year there's injuries. You just don't know if it's going to be a team. Maybe it is, a team that is making the playoffs that needs a quarterback. So good for Aaron Glenn, man. I'm glad that he stood on his own 2 feet and made sure that he wasn't going to let this whole situation, overrun his team. And I think that's the best way to go about it too, is just to, he had to insert his dominance right away. This is my team. This is my way. It's a new team. It's a new vision. We're not going to be having a circus around us. We're not Barnum and Bailey. This is the New York Jets. We're putting it back together, with or without you. We don't care. Great for him. So we'll move on from that. Absolutely. Okay, so don't forget, we're starting a new process probably in the next week or so, where we're going to highlight the best comments of the day. And then at the end of the show, you guys are going to be able to vote on the best comments of the day to be able to pick a winner. And then at the end of the month, what we're going to do is take all of those winners, we're going to throw them into a wheel, we're going to do a wheel spin, and somebody's going to win a prize, whether it's Rockhound merch, whether it's Lions merch, whether it's something signed, something, grab bag, whatever. We're going to do something special. We want to see you guys pumping the comments. The good comments, obviously, are going to, outweigh the others. And it's purely based on, what we're talking about. It's good to see when we're having good conversation about topics that you guys are staying in line with those topics. And we're going to try to highlight, what you're saying that's in line with our segment. And then we'll store those at the end of the day. So we're only going to pick 4 a day max. So four people's comments a day. So it's going to take all 3 of us here to make sure that we pay attention to the chat each and every day. But we'll start that probably after the draft. We got enough going on right now.
On that note, real quick, Michael Garrity, he mentioned he did try to do a super chat, but it didn't go through, and I just had commented back that I would make sure I brought that to your attention. I don't know if there's anything that can be done about it, but wanted to at least acknowledge Mike and let you know.
I don't know why it wouldn't, but what I would say is don't do a super chat, man. Take that money and go put it towards one of the raffles. Hit the link at the top of the page here in the pinned comment, and hit that link and go to the raffle page. Go buy a raffle ticket. Don't send it in a super chat, but we appreciate it. We appreciate you at least attempting to and supporting the channel. But I'd rather see you get a chance to win something. So let's do it that way, right? There you go.
Yeah,
Brandy just posted it in the chat as well.
Yeah, and Michael, hey, good luck on your recovery. He just had surgery yesterday, so thinking about you there, friend.
Yeah. Yesterday put a couple of messages to you, and I hope you recover fast. I don't know the extent of your surgery, not that I really need to know, but whatever it was, I hope that it goes well for you.
Yeah, get him back to work.
There we go. Let's move on to the next one. So this, it's news. I could really care less about the guy, but there was a lot of stuff talked about. Oh, I got to sign in again. There's a lot of stuff talked about last year with one of the Detroit Lions' former players, and that is Isaiah Buggs. And last season, he was going through it, man. He was having some domestic issues, allegedly. And there was some other issues going on. I mean, the Lions moved off from him, and there's a lot of speculation that he was having some trouble in the locker room. We don't really know, right? We really don't know. And not that it's any of our business what his personal life is all about, but it was last season, towards the end of the season, that he was accused of animal cruelty, that he moved out of his house, wherever this house was. I think it was in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And he owed, I guess, a bunch of rent, as reported in this article. And he left behind a couple of dogs. And those dogs were in a bad way. when they were found. So let me go through this article here by Jenna West of The Athletic, where it says Tuscaloosa County District Attorney's Office dismissed all charges of animal cruelty against the former defensive tackle Isaiah Buggs on Wednesday. Buggs' attorney, Greg Gambrill, confirmed the dismissal in a statement to The Athletic that the charges of second-degree cruelty to dogs were dismissed with prejudice after the state of Alabama received evidence that exonerated Buggs, according to Buggs' attorney. Quote, "We are grateful to the Tuscaloosa County District Attorney's Office for its careful review of the facts and evidence and for working toward a fair and just outcome. I am focused on moving forward and continuing my football career." That was what Buggs had said yesterday. Now, according to this report here, what had happened is Buggs turned himself in on May 31 of 2024 after being accused of animal cruelty on March 28 of 2024. There was 2 dogs left on his back porch at a home that investigators found was rented by Isaiah Buggs. Witnesses said that Buggs recently moved out of the home, and investigators determined that Buggs' lease was terminated in April due to owing more than $3,100 in backed rent. When police and animal control officers arrived at the residence, they found a pit bull on the screened-in back porch surrounded by feces and a Rottweiler mix locked in a cage in direct sunlight, both without access to food and water. Now, that's a bad situation, right? I mean, obviously we've heard some things in the past, like with Michael Vick and the dog fighting. There was just another player that was brought up on charges. It was like hundreds of dogs involved in some sort of a fighting ring. And I apologize, I don't have all the information on that one, but that just popped up over the last week or so. I don't understand these things. Like, I don't get it. Like, why do we fight roosters and dogs? And I understand that roosters are part of, some cultures in other countries, but it just doesn't make any sense to me. The dogs were severely malnourished. And what ended up happening here is that Buggs' attorney, Buggs' criminal defense team, had furnished a recorded phone message to one of Buggs' friends, I guess at the time, where that individual, with Otis Lee and an unnamed woman, were supposed to take care of the dogs. And so he provided this evidence to the state, and the state dismissed the charges. It's kind of weird, right? You would think that even though that someone else was supposed to take care of your dogs, they're still your dogs. It's still your fault, right? But at any rate, charges dismissed. Buggs is now not the evil man that he was pointed out to be just a season ago. So maybe it resurrects his career, maybe it doesn't, but at least this part of his life is over. What's next here? Any comments on Buggs?
I don't know what to think of it all. I don't even know if Buggs is still playing in the league. I know he got picked up by Kansas City for a year.
He's still a free agent.
He didn't even play last year, did he?
No, he's a free agent right now.
Right now?
I don't remember if he played last year or not, honestly.
Yeah. I think his career is done. He can fade off into the sunset now. He did an admirable job while he was with the Detroit Lions, had some bad things happen on the way out the door. Hopefully he gets his stuff together and has a great life after football.
So next up, we've got some NFL news here on what could potentially be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. Could be the highest running back drafted in this draft, Ashton Gianti. And Riley wanted to speak to a handwritten message that Ashton Gianti has now sent to all 32 teams. Riley, what's going on with Ashton Gianti?
Yeah, look, this is a guy that we know is very confident in his ability, but for anybody that's read an article on the Players Tribune, I love these things. I've been reading them for jazz players used to put them up, basketball players, football players, any type of athlete. It's cool to see you get a deeper look at the person. And I think the timing of Ashton Gianti's Players Tribune article is obviously, it's timed very well with him being just a week away from entering the NFL. But it's a pretty quick read as a whole. But he just talks about his growing up, how he started playing football, stuff that you'd think is pretty, routine, but he's got a unique journey. When we're talking about like Aaron Rodgers and the prima donna and the more dramatic type of personalities, this is not Ashton Gianti. Ashton Gianti says, I'll tell you this, ask about me. Go ask my coaches from Lone Star if I made any noise. I'm guessing they'll say the same thing. Ashton Gianti, nah. He just went out there and played football. That dude loves football. Sophomore year, I came in, they put me at outside linebacker, defensive end, safety, and special teams. My attitude was, I'll play anywhere. As long as it helps my team win. Junior year, they moved me to slot receiver, and if you're doubting my pass catching skills, I'd say go watch that tape. I was dangerous. It's so cool to see somebody like it's okay for him to brag about himself in this setting, because it's like this is the one time he's going to do it, right? He's going to hype himself up. But he talks about he wasn't highly recruited. His dad took a detour. They moved out to Italy, so he didn't play football for a year. But the whole thing, he just leads it into this is what makes me different. This is Gianti saying, I truly believe I was born to do this. I truly believe what makes me different, it isn't about the position I line up at. It's about the mindset I bring to it. Those 11 dudes on defense, they're on a football field playing football. Me, in my mind, I'm still in the backyard with my friends playing No One Can Touch Me. I've taken a long way. I'm done with that way. If you pick me, it's simple. I'm coming to your franchise to do what Saquon and the Eagles just did. I'm coming to win big and soon. It's tackle football. You know what I'm saying? I draft the guy they can't tackle. Thank you for your time. Ashton Gianti. That's how he signs off on it. I'm like, man, mic drop, just an awesome article. If you haven't read it yet, I strongly recommend it. It's, we've got our guy, the Lions. We've got a couple really good running backs. Wouldn't trade Gibbs for anybody in the league, but whoever gets this kid at running back, I mean, I imagine he's going to have a high selling jersey and go from being somebody that wasn't a highly recruited player to likely a really popular player in the NFL. Will, you've been high on him the whole way through. I think your first mock, you had him to Chicago, I want to say, top 10 pick. What are your...
I hold on here. You know what?
That's my worst fear is I don't want him to end up in Chicago.
It was either Chicago or the Raiders.
I think, yeah, one of those two is where you had him.
I don't think he makes it to the Bears.
You think he goes before?
He might not. I mean, he might be a top 7 pick.
I hope so, man. Not just keep him out of the NFC North.
The only way I see the Bears getting him is if the Bears trade up.
Mm-hmm. And with all the money they spend in free agency, they might look at it and say, that's a perfect fit. We signed a bunch of guys.
Yeah, and they re-signed a linebacker this week and their slot corner.
Because if Ben Johnson can, I mean, we know he can coach, but if he is a good head coach and he does tame Caleb Williams and Rome Odins takes a step, and then you add this guy, and yeah, I would rather it not happen. But Gianti's such a stud, man. Just an awesome football player. And again, that article was really cool. And I thought, what a badass thing to say. Like, hey guys, if talking to the GMs, draft the guy that can't get tackled.
I like his statement, and I get what he's saying. That you obviously want to take a game changer, right? And somebody that can affect the game in a positive way. I mean, going out and comparing yourself to Saquon. is a bit deep, but I would say this. He is one of my true blue chippers in this draft. He's one of my first round grades, and there's not many. Just going back and looking here, my first mock on 2/17 of 25, I had him number 12 to the Cowboys. And then in my second mock on 2/24, I had him going all the way back to the Bolts at 22. And then in number 3, I had him going again to the Bolts. And then in number 4, I had him going to the Bears, and that was on 3/10. So, yeah, about a month and a week ago, 5 weeks ago, I had him going to the Bears. Now I have him as high up as number 6 to the Raiders. And quite honestly, he could end up being a top 4 pick. I don't think he goes number 1 to the Titans. I don't think he goes number 2 to the Browns. And I think the Giants don't know what the hell they want to do. And I think the Patriots are going to stick with either defense or offensive line. I think the Jags could go defensive line, even though their defensive line you would think is pretty solid. But if you add that third wheel to the Jags defensive front, my God, it's going to be great. And the Raiders, they can go in any direction because they kind of need everything, right? Besides Max Crosby. So I think that if there's a real opportunity here, it's the Raiders. Without any trades, it would be the Raiders. I think is probably as early he is going to go without any trades.
I can't wait for Thursday to find out. But the great thing is too, I feel like Brad Holmes blazed the trail with, Atlanta took Bijan that first round too, but just that we're even talking about this guy as being a top 10 pick, the value's there, but it took somebody coming along and being like, no, I don't care if he's the positional value. And now it's like, oh, Detroit did it. It worked. So it's kind of like going for it on 4th down a bunch. It's follow suit. Like, oh, this guy's really good. Let's not overthink it. Just get a great player.
He's so electric, man. And what's funny is when you look at him, and I know I've said this a couple of times, but when you look at him in the backfield, he has the same identical stance as Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah.
You don't see, like the old days, these guys are down kind of in their, 2-point or whatever. They're got their hands on their thighs or hands on their hips or hands on their knees, kind of leaning forward. Not Gibbs and not Genty. These guys are just kind of hanging back, not arms crossed, but they're just kind of hanging back, leaning to the side, just kind of looking, where they're going to go, looking at the hole, looking at the defense. They're just so relaxed. I don't understand that, but it works. For whatever reason, it works. I don't get it. I don't know the philosophy behind it, but it works. It'd be interesting to ask Tashard Choice, is that something he developed with Gibbs? Tashard Choice obviously has been part of Gibbs since like high school, I think. Where did that stance develop? Why did it develop? What is the reasoning for it? So anyway, yeah, Genty, I can't wait to see him play this year. I just hope it's not in the NFC North. He's gonna be fun to watch.
I would be interested to hear what the New York Giant guys that you had on. I would love to know what they would think about the Giants possibly taking Genty at 3. What they would think about that, since Sheen let Saquon Barkley go for nothing to a rival, and then you're gonna draft his replacement.
Well, those guys will be on next week Thursday. Big Blue will be, and in the draft show that we did a week ago, he still has the Giants taking Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah,
and
but what if they pivot and they take Genty instead?
They absolutely could. Look, I think that if you're the Giants, you can still move up into the back end of the second round and find a quarterback. If Dart and Milroe have not gone yet, which they will.
Yeah.
They will. They're going to be gone. There's going to be 4 quarterbacks gone in the first round. All right, so up next here. Oh, go ahead.
Just as you said that, I wanted to point out something. I'm sure it was mentioned too, but it was the other day, Eric, you were talking about, the green room went from 8, 10, 12, whatever it was. Now I think they bumped it to 17.
17, yeah.
And it was ironic, I thought, because 2 of those, the 5 or whatever that were added, 2, I believe, were Dart and Milroe.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
Will's first mock draft, they were both in the first round. At the time, any other consensus mock draft you looked at, those guys were second. I think third was where I saw Dart go a lot. So just interesting. It was a good forecasting. When I saw those names added, it's like they'll probably go first round. So
it's kind of funny, right? Here, I'll just show you guys. I'll just throw it up on the screen. Now, my first mock draft was kind of my funny because last year I put Jaden Daniels at number 1 going to the Bears because I said the Bears were going to royally F it up and they weren't going to take the best quarterback in the draft, which was Jaden Daniels, and I hit that one out the park. That was a 500-yard home run, not feet, yards, right? Longest home run in history. Jalen Milroe, there it is, number 1. And I put him there just because I feel like he's going to end up shocking this NFL. I really do. I really think he's going to be a special player. And it may take him a year or two, right? But I think that whoever takes him this year, they're going to get an elevated quarterback room. And the way that he tested was incredible. And then in number 2, I didn't even have a quarterback. I would say I had Cam Ward going number 2. I had Shedeur going number 6. And then I didn't put anybody else in because I expect trades, and I wasn't doing any trades. And then number 3, still had Cam Ward at 2, still had Shedeur at 6. I didn't put anybody else in because, again, no trades. And then number 4, except for the Lions. And then number 4, I had Cam Ward slipping to 3. And then I had Shedeur Sanders. Where is he? Where's Shedeur? Why is he not in here? Oh, all the way down to 21 at Pittsburgh on number 4's mock draft. So it's just, look, I can see certain things happening here. I do believe that there's going to be some action with some trades trying to get some of these quarterbacks. So talking about the draft, right? Talking about first round grades. The question came up the other day by Peter Van Larhoven, and I said I would share it this weekend. I decided to share it today. I have to be honest that this draft has been tough because it is so loaded, but in a different way. You know, before you might have had, well, I guess for instance, last year, I want to say I had 19 first round grades in 2023. And last year I had 17. This year, I have 14. This is the lowest draft that I've seen in the last 4, maybe 5 drafts where I have not even half of the first round with first round grades. So 14 first round grades. What does that tell you? If Brad Holmes has a blue chipper on his mind, and depending on how you evaluate blue chippers, I've heard it go a couple of different ways where some analysts will say there's only 2, maybe 3 true blue chippers in this draft. You know, back in the day when they used to do the colors, you know, and they'd slot the guys by colors, whatever, that's the old way. Nowadays, it's kind of putting these guys in tiers. And for me, I have 14 first round grades, but the second round grades, or the second tier, if you will, is huge. Like it is wide. I mean, I see so many starters in this draft. And that's the difference between a first round grade, immediate starters, immediate, game changers, or you might have a wide receiver that is a first round grade that, maybe they don't just pop off in the first year, depending on what kind of receiver room they're going to. So those can affect things, right? Same thing with the defensive lineman. If they're going into a defensive line group that is loaded, well, maybe they don't have a crazy first year. It doesn't mean that they weren't a first round grade. Just because a rookie doesn't step in and have 10 sacks doesn't mean that they weren't a first round grade. It's part of the process. And it really depends on what defense you're going into, the style of defense that you're needing to play. Are they changing the scheme? Are you going from what was a 3-4 to a 4-3? There's a learning curve. But for this draft, I've continually said that between 26 and 45, that is the meat of the draft, where you're going to get a ton of really great value and really solid starters in year one. So first round grades, I have 14. Second round grades, I have 32. 32. Now, I know it's weird. Like, okay, well, there's 32 second round, like there's 32 picks. Well, just like there's 32 in the first round, right? There's 32 teams selecting. There's a difference there. A true second rounder to me, 42, not 32, excuse me. The true second rounder may not be a second round pick. They were taken in the second round, but what is a second round pick essentially supposed to be? A quality starter at some point. Not necessarily year one. It could be year 2 or year 3. I have 32 tweeners, right? Guys that could be first rounders or second rounders. I have 42 overall between the first round and second round. So if you add them together, that's 56. That's 56 first and second round grades. So now I have to really kind of open up that meat of the draft a little bit, where you could go as deep as pick 56 and you're still getting, at least by my grades, a really high quality football player that could start in year 1. But I'm still going to leave it between 26 and 45. That if the Detroit Lions really want to do some damage and kind of where they're picking at 28 and 60, where they can move up from 60, that's where they're going to have to do some damage. I firmly believe that even at pick 60, the Lions are going to find a very high quality football player with extreme value. So I brought up a new term yesterday, and we'll come back to this in just a moment, but I brought up a new term yesterday. We hear Brad Holmes says best player available, right? Then we hear other people say best need, right? Or the need for the team. We know that Brad loves the term need, like he said yesterday. He doesn't. He doesn't draft for need. He fills the needs or the holes in free agency, and then he addresses the team and the future of the team based on best player available in the first round or at any round, really. I think it's changed this year. I think it's now best value available. Well, BVA, not BPA. I've never heard anybody talk about that before. We've talked about value and getting great value, but now I think it's best value. And the reason why I'm saying that, and I think Brad kind of said this a little bit yesterday. I don't remember the exact quote. I probably should have pulled it. But if you guys remember a couple weeks ago, even probably back into the first round, first draft I did, first mock, I said it only makes sense for Brad to get rid of those later round draft picks to move forward and get better value, because these guys aren't going to make the team in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. It's unlikely that they're going to make the team. Or we're going to see some really good football players on the team right now that are not going to make the team. They could end up being practice squad guys, because typically you don't want to lose your draft picks in the first year. And thankfully, Brad Holmes really hasn't lost any draft picks in the first year of taking them, because they've all made the team. Now, to his credit, they had to make the team in the first couple of years because we didn't have any football players. We didn't have a full roster. We weren't operating with a full deck. Now we are, and the roster's loaded. So best value available means you're going to get rid of some later round picks. You're probably going to move off of some picks in 2026. You're going to move forward in this draft because it is loaded at defensive line. They may not be first round talents, but you're going to get some extremely good value in high quality football players in round 2, even into round 3. And it doesn't make sense to just draft guys in round 4, 5, 6, and 7 because you really don't have a spot for those guys. You just don't. Who are you going to get rid of on this roster? So it's best value available, I think, in this year's draft, not best player. And you can outline the draft the same way, right? Best player overall. But how do you get that player? If they're, a second round grade and you're picking at 60, but that player is probably going to be off the board at 45, how are you going to get that player? Where is the value? Should that player have been a first round pick? Probably. Did they slip a little bit? Absolutely. So does it make sense then to trade, 2, 3 late round picks that you don't need, that are probably not going to make the roster anyway, and move forward? It does make more sense then. But I think the real value is in the first round, trading back. At 28, there's going to be a logjam. And at 28, it's pretty much all the same player between 26 and 45. So it doesn't matter if we take that player at 28 or 38. It's still the same type of football player. So now it's a value proposition. I'm going to back off of 28. I'm going to add another pick that'll help me gain another pick, maybe inside the top 50 or 60. And now I'm going to get 3 really good football players, hopefully in the top 60, and gain a ton of value. That's where I really see this draft going for the Lions, more so than in any other years. I really think Brad is going to try to hammer the top 60, but at least the top 75 in this draft. I'll kick it to you, Eric.
Yeah, I see the same thing. I would not be surprised if you see Brad move up, though. And why would I say that? After listening to Brad yesterday, believe that he is fearless with these picks. And the fact that if there is one guy that he wants and is his guy, he has no problem moving up to grab that guy. So if there's an edge rusher or a defensive lineman or an offensive lineman, someone that fills a need but is just the best guy left on the board, according to Brad, at a position of need, I could seriously see them moving up just like last year, another 4 spots, maybe 10 spots, hell, maybe all the way up into the top 5. You just don't know. So I would not be surprised to see Brad move up. And then once the second and third round get here, I wouldn't be surprised to see him do it again. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions end up with 0 day 3 picks. And we do it all on day 1 and day 2. That would not surprise me one bit.
The other thing that I'll add to that is I wouldn't be surprised if Brad leverages 2026 a little bit, meaning you might use a couple of picks next year to help yourself in this draft. And at the same time, that if he moves off of 28 and moves back, and he can hopefully stay early into the second round, that you might add a draft pick for 2026 as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if Brad has his eyes on 3 positions, 3 draft picks in this year's draft that he really wants to hit. And then maybe you get that, 4th, maybe a 5th pick in this year's draft, and they call that a win-win-win. And then next year they focus on something different and they have a few more picks early in the game. Remember, we'll have 2/3. Maybe we add an extra second, and that'll help them maneuver maybe to get 2 first-round picks. So it just makes more sense now, the reason why they took Jack Campbell at 18, because they had a first-round grade on him, and 18 is where they probably had 18 first-round draft or 18 first-round grades that year. Anyway, what do you think, Riley?
Yeah, I think it's so hard to forecast. I feel like it's either going to be, there will be some trades. There is every year, obviously. But I feel like it'll be because when you have all these guys in such a group that it's, the same value player at 15 all the way through 40 or whatever the case is, does that make it harder to trade? Because teams are, like, well, we can probably just sit here and we can get this guy or this guy or this guy. Or we'll find out once the draft starts, like, no, they're keen on this particular player. But, Brad Holmes made no bones about it. Like you started the show today, Will, reiterating, and this great refreshing thing about both he and Coach Dan Campbell is just their transparency. So Brad Holmes is very, very good at saying a lot without giving up any information, but still being informative. And I love that about listening to him speak. We'll find out for sure what direction they go, but it's obviously it's going to be, they're either going to make a trade or they won't. But I'm just excited to see and find out who the players are that he's got an eye on, because he was asked yesterday, do you have the player that's going to make you pound a table again? And I'm sure that he does. He's going to feel some type of reward once they get whatever player they get, or players.
What's nuts is, I've been saying this whole time that I felt like the teams at the top of the draft, the Titans, the Browns, the Giants, that none of them, in my opinion, really need a quarterback this year. Doesn't mean that they don't need a quarterback. But when you only have 14, number 1 grades in this draft, how are you going to facilitate building a roster and at the same time making sure that if you do grab a quarterback, that you even have enough on the offensive line to protect that quarterback, or enough weapons on the offensive side of the football to give that quarterback a fighting chance in their first year? Like, typically, teams don't set their quarterbacks up for success. I think in their first year as rookies, oftentimes they come into a bad situation because these are bad football teams that are picking at the top of the draft for a reason. And then these quarterbacks get in there and they get their butts kicked the first year more often than not. And then it's trying to, fight, claw, and scratch back to getting this team to a point where it can protect the quarterback and then also give them an opportunity to move the ball down the field. If it were me, I wouldn't even be taking a quarterback if I were those teams. I would either trade back a little bit if I could, or I would grab the blue chip generational type player and take the Abdul Carters, right? Take the Travis Hunters, take the Ashton Gientis, take the best edge, the best DT. Let the quarterbacks fall. Maybe you can move back up and grab them later, but don't pass up on some of these amazing football players, on the offensive line, defensive line. That's just what I would do. You can always find a quarterback in the draft. And going one more year, with a bridge quarterback isn't going to kill you. Like, it's not, your fan base may not be extremely excited, but if you grab some of these football players and you make the team better overall, just like the Lions did, like, they didn't care about a quarterback.
Yep.
Right? They built their team from the inside out. And then they went and, now they can be a little bit more frugal or not. They can be a little bit less frugal, honestly. They can go and pick whoever they really want to insert at a position of need. But that's just not what Brad does.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to find the best football players. So I just ran a mock draft while we were sitting here just to see what happened. And Cam Ward slips to 21. Shedeur Sanders is not picked yet. That's very awkward to see that just happened, as I was talking about it. That Abdul Carter went first. Mason Graham went second. Travis Hunter went third. Tet McMillan, I don't know why he keeps going early in this draft. I really don't see where he's the number one wide receiver. I really don't. Ashton Genty went 5. Tyler Warren went 6. Barron went 7. Green went 8. Walter Nolan went 9. Malachi Starks went 10 to Chicago. And then you have a rash of, some offensive linemen going.
Where did Gianti go?
5 to the Jags.
Oh, wow.
So just running that real quick, where now Cam Ward becomes a Steeler, that makes a lot of sense. Makes a ton of sense. And so now the Lions are on the clock. And they have everybody to pick from. They have Emeka Egbuka. They have Gray Zabel. They have Nick Scorton. They have Alec Iomanor, Jaden Higgins, Michael Williams, Landon Jackson, Tyleek Williams, Derek Harmon, Shedeur Sanders, Tyler Booker, Donovan Jackson, Darius Alexander, Demetrius Knight, Carson Sweshinger, which, by the way, I'm really beginning to like him. The more and more I dig into him, the L linebacker out of UCLA, really, really like him. So I just see that this draft can be flipped upside down in a hurry. And I think the first 3 picks, first 4 picks are going to tell us what's going to happen. If they don't take a quarterback in the first 4 picks, even if there's not one trade, those guys are sliding. And that is going to totally screw up this draft, because at some point, teams are going to trade up to grab these quarterbacks. We'll see if it happens. I've said it very early on. I don't think the Titans are taking a quarterback. And I know it is totally against the grain. Totally against the grain. And I know that they even canceled their meeting with Shedeur Sanders, which would say, okay, we're taking Cam Ward or bust, right? Or it's someone else. So it's either Cam or someone else. We're not taking Shedeur. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But let's get into yesterday's press conference a little bit. Eric, I'll kick it to you. Brad Holmes, press conference, jazzed up the fan base a little bit. You had 6 takeaways. from the press conference. I think it was highlighted by Tim Twentyman. So let's run through that.
Yeah, it was 5 by Jeremy Reisman. And so he started off with, the ball is in Zadarius Smith's court. The Lions have not had further discussions with Zadarius Smith since the owners' meeting, according to Brad Holmes, and are waiting for his agent to reach out if Smith's situation changes or he has renewed interest in returning to Detroit after being cut. So what this says to me is that Brad drew a line in the sand and said, this is how much we are willing to pay you. And if you like it, let us know. If you don't like it, good luck in all your future endeavors. So I think myself, that is really what it is Brad has drawn a line in the sand. And the reason he hasn't talked to Zadarius Smith's agent is there's nothing to talk about. There is no back and forth because Zadarius isn't willing to get close to their number, it sounds like.
Hey, happy birthday to Bo Booth in the chat. Looks like he said he just turned 47 today.
We're not.
No, that's so funny because I misread. He said, hey guys, I'm 47 today. So I jumped in. I'm all, hey man, happy birthday. He's like, no. I was referring to being like number 47 for the stream. He said I was 47 decades ago.
I got you.
Yeah,
I got you.
That's
okay.
that
It's not his birthday today.
I called the wrong play. That's not Will. That's my mistake. But still, congrats on being like 47, and thanks for being here.
So, what is your guys' take on the Zadarius Smith thing?
Well, I mean, it's no different than what I've been saying. I think that at the very beginning of this, when they didn't pick up his contract and they released him, I think I was probably one of the only ones that said nothing is happening here. Like, they're going to wait until after the draft. I think I said it multiple times that I thought that Zadarius Smith would be wise to wait throughout the summer and even wait until midway through the season. But I also said that nobody knows what's going on in Brad Holmes' phone book or his office. No one knows the conversations that are going on. And matter of fact, Brad even said yesterday, no conversations have happened with the agent and Zadarius Smith outside of the initial conversations that said, can't do it right now, but let us know if, the heat, temperature starts to turn up and Zadarius starts to get some action. And I think that's the right play, as long as the agent is, being forthright and gives the Lions an opportunity. I think that the Lions want him back. I think that they want him back at the right number. And I think at the same time, I think that they also want Zadarius to sit and wait, that if an injury happens, that he can step right into a contender as opposed to going somewhere else that may not be a contender. If a lot of teams wanted Zadarius Smith right now, a deal would be done. And if maybe Zadarius Smith wasn't asking for too much money, a deal would be done. That hasn't been the case. So I think from the very beginning, like I said, it's going to take time, and I think it's going to be at least after the draft before anything happens. If the Lions should go into this draft and not walk away with an edge rusher, I think that would be catastrophic. And I also think that means that Zadarius Smith is probably going to be coming back at some point, because they definitely can't get through the season after learning what their thought process is with Pascal this year, with who they have on the other side. They're going to need some more depth. They need a rookie to balance the contracts. So, I don't think they're not going to get one, but it's just where they get one. But anyway, Z Smith, I think it's a waiting game, and I think that it's the right move by Brad and his agent to just get a hold of Brad when something happens, when something's moving for Zadarius Smith, and then it's either you're in or you're out. It's that simple.
Perfectly said.
All right. Well, I do know that Zadarius Smith has a rapper girlfriend in Detroit, and he's been going to Pistons games, and he's still wearing a Lions hat, still wearing his Lions ring that he had made up. And he's making himself very publicly viewed in Detroit. So that might be his way of trying to put the pressure on. Next, the Detroit has not fielded any calls for trading of the 28th pick. As of the press conference yesterday, the Lions have not received any trade offers for their first round pick, number 28 overall. But this could change depending on how the draft board unfolds, which is not surprising because that's something that's really going to have to wait till draft night. And I get this feeling that a lot of fans want to move backward and collect more picks, but I just don't see that with the Lions this year because it's going to be really hard to make this team. Only 3, maybe 4 players would even have room to even try to make this team, even as a backup. So trying to trade back and fill the war chest with more picks, I don't see as an option this year. What do you guys think?
Yeah, go ahead, Riley.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You can kind of go both ways with it, but I just think listening to Brad Holmes and looking at all the draft content, it just seems like it's going to be harder to. Again, it's a bigger pool where players that if all these guys are in the same group, then teams are probably going to be less willing to trade. And so depending on how the board falls, obviously Brad Holmes might just say, you know what, let's turn these 3 or 2 into 1 and just go get a player we really, really like that, can play right away. But he talked about, and Will's always talking about roster roulette. Brad Holmes said, the needs, he's like, I get annoyed. And then he corrected himself, not annoyed, but the needs, because you fill one hole and another one inevitably opens up. And so I just don't know what position on the team right now is like sticking out like a sore thumb. Like you need to start replenishing that position for the future. So I do think it's going to be harder to trade in this draft, trading backwards.
Yeah.
I think that let's not confuse the issue about trading back. So you can trade back in this draft and acquire picks, and it doesn't have to be for 25. You can add picks in 26 and 27. So moving back doesn't mean that you necessarily need to backfill, round 4, 5, and 6 and 7 picks for this year. You could, you can essentially say, I'll trade back my 28. I'll swap you for your 35 this year in the second round, and I want a second rounder next year, which the way I understand it, I spoke with someone last year, kind of how some of these things are facilitated. Obviously, it goes by the value and the trade value charts, but think about it this way. I mean, there's a lot of things that come into play when you make a trade for a pick. One, where do you see that team this year? Are they going to win a lot of games? Are they going to be about where they are? Are they going to improve, maybe get into the middle? So that has to be a value-added proposition of, yep, we're 3 in 14 this year, but we're going to probably win 9 games this year. So that means our pick is probably going to be in the, 15, 16, 17 area. So, okay, so if you add a second-round pick next year, you'll be picking in the middle of the second round. That's a much more valuable pick than, let's say you go and win 13 games and now you're picking, at the back end of the second round. So you have to keep those things into consideration. So if the Lions were to pick swap 28 for, let's say, 35, and they want a second round next year, a team might be willing to give him a second round next year versus maybe they have 2 seconds this year or a third this year that's early in the third round. Maybe the Lions can jump a pick by putting that pick on the back burner and saying, give us your second next year as opposed to a third this year. So that pick has more value to the Lions next year than that third round pick may have value this year. But then they can still take that pick that they get next year and trade it with someone else to move up or whatever they want to do. So there's so much gymnastics going on here. Tons. Yep. It is very difficult to pinpoint what trades are going to happen. That's why you have to go by the value of the picks first. And then you kind of have to look at the future picks for these teams that they could potentially trade with and where it lines up. I think that there's a lot of value for the Lions to move back and to add draft capital next year. Always. The great teams always add draft picks. Always. Those are the teams that are doing well every year in the playoffs.
And speaking of draft pick trades, yesterday it came out that in the past, the Lions have attempted another Jameson Williams-like trade up. While Holmes did not specify when or for whom, he revealed the Lions have tried to make significant jumps in the draft, similar to their trade for Jameson Williams in 2022, indicating a willingness to be aggressive in acquiring specific players. And if you remember last year, I think it was Brad said he started at number 18. When he was trying to move up to get Terrion Arnold, he started with the team that was at number 18. Then he went to the 19th team, then the 20th team, then the 21st team. You know, he went all the way down till he got to what, 24 with the Cowboys before he finally found a partner willing to trade with him. People just did not want to move off their picks last year. So I found this quite revealing that Brad has really tried to move up. So people that say Brad never says F them picks, well, that's the way Brad does it, is by trying to move up in the draft.
So hold on a second. What you said that he tried to move up to 18?
Yeah. Last year he had tried to move up to all the way to 18. That's when he started making calls, he said.
But Brad didn't say that.
I thought Brad said that.
You read that from something, right?
Yeah, it was something last year, yeah.
Okay. I don't remember Brad saying that, but I'll put that one aside for a moment, because that would be enlightening if he actually did come out and say, I don't remember him saying that he revealed who he was trying to trade with. And the reason why I'm saying that would be enlightening for last year, because if you remember, there was about 18 first round grades last year. I think I said I had 19 last year. I wrote it down. I have it written down somewhere. So what would that tell you? That if his first round grades were in the top 18, 19 of the draft, then it would make sense that he was trying to get up that early to get one of his first round graded football players. Terrion Arnold was still a first round grade. Taking him at 24 or wherever, we took him at 24. He was still a first round grade. He slipped. So they got extreme value again by not having to go up to 18 and potentially give up more. I think we gave up way too much for the Cowboys, but I still love the pick that we got.
What did we end up giving up for him? A third and a
we
fifth?
We gave like a third and a fifth, and I thought something else, but at least a third. It was this year's third, because we only have the comp third this year, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So they knew they were going to lose Glenn most likely, and then get that pick back. But yeah,
exactly. So they're forecasting, just like next year, they have 2/3. That they can move off of one this year to move up in this year's draft if they really wanted to. Now, I'm not going to give away my full draft plan because it's going to come out this weekend. But let's just say I have a couple of scenarios for the Lions moving up, and I have a couple of scenarios for the Lions moving back. And either way, the Lions win, obviously. And giving up some draft picks really doesn't matter at this point. And that's what I want people to take away from this exercise that I'm going to do this weekend is F them picks in free agency, you're screwing yourself. F those picks in the draft, way different ball game, because you're getting a player for 4 or 5 years on an extremely cheap contract relative to the other positional contracts, or at least that position contract max value. And essentially you're giving up freebies, right? I mean, yeah, these are picks that you get every year for free. These are players that you get every year that you got to pay for, but they're free picks. If you do a good job in trading and you stack future assets like the great teams do, 49ers, Seahawks, Raiders, Broncos, and a few others, they do great jobs at trading for future draft capital. Those are the teams that end up building great quality teams, and they leverage those picks to be able to get up and get the players that they want when they need to get up and get those players. This year, trading back makes the most sense, but it only makes sense to move up for a few reasons. And I would say because moving up this year is going to cost less than it did last year. But we'll keep going. What was the next one?
All right. The Lions are going to prefer quality over quantity. Holmes stated his priority is acquiring the best football players, even if it leads to having more talented players than roster spots. Rather than focusing on drafting a large number of rookies solely for financial flexibility, he hinted they might even trade up to get a player they really want. And that's pretty much what we were just saying.
Yeah, go ahead,
And
Riley.
then-
No, I was just thinking that listening to this too, it's funny because somebody made a comment. I think Kevin Barr earlier in the chat too said, "Man, I'm all about mocked out with drafts. We're just getting to that point, like we're ready to do this." But
Yep.
I love it because this conversation, I'm literally my wheels are turning now because what Will is saying. Why I didn't even consider it from that angle too. Of maybe this is a year where you stockpile for next year. Maybe we come out of this with 3 players, but then more assets next year, and then because that's exactly how the team is built, right? That first year, it was like, man, we can't go buy a nice sports car. We got to buy a house first. We got to build this thing up. Well, now you've built a house. Now you can go and have a little bit of fun and still be, really calculated with it too. But the direction that it goes, the great thing for me is just knowing. I remember last year hearing like Quinion Mitchell was the consensus cornerback number 1 or 1A, 1B with Arnold. There were some people in the Lions media saying, no, the Lions absolutely, just like with Gibbs and Bijan, if they could have taken either, they really liked Gibbs more. If they could have taken Mitchell, he went before Arnold, they got their guy. The end of the draft, I always feel like now we finally get to see who these players are that Brad Holmes is probably got a circle on, in the draft board now. But how many players do the Lions come away with next week is thing that makes it remains to be seen, but I'm so excited for it and appreciate the perspective of it too, because it's not always just how many players you get, but maybe you're starting to strategize a little differently.
Okay, so do me a favor then. I see a couple of comments in here. Do me a favor. Let's see. I was asking the question to Eric if Brad said that last year that he had a deal in place with 18 or 19. And then I think it was Brent Lighton that said he said that he had a deal in place with 17 and then backed out. So find me the article, find me where Brad said that, the audio, the article, whatever. Email it to mailbag@rockdown.com. Because I never heard of anything last year. Brad typically doesn't tell anybody anything, even if he had a deal in place or had conversations. He never outlines the teams. Just like he said yesterday, he wouldn't outline the teams or the players. Speaking specifically about the players, he won't outline any of that. He never gives that away before or after the draft. I think because after the draft, he doesn't say those things because it kind of spits in the face of the other players to say, oh, you had that player ahead of me. You had someone higher than me, and then you settled for me at 24. See, Brad would never do that. He's never done that in the years that, I paid attention to every press conference that he's ever been in, but I can be wrong. So if you know where this audio is or the article that reported, a factual article, I'm not talking about some YouTuber that is saying this happened or is going to happen or whatever, clickbait. Yeah, I don't want that. I want facts from Brad's mouth, right, through a insider that has a factual quote, not a what if scenario. That's the only thing I deal in is facts. And yeah, I want to know because that helps me identify a few things. It helps me identify the thought process and just from my own perspective, what Brad is thinking last year. See, last year I said that the best place for the Lions to be was 16. And to be able to get into the top 16, to be able to get that edge rusher, which in my opinion was going to be Jared Verse. Remind me, where did Jared Verse go?
At that
18 to the Rams, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's exactly why I said that I thought that if he gets into 16, he'll be able to get Terry and Arnold, or he'll be able to get the best edge rusher in the draft. And that was right where all of the offensive players stopped in the first part of that draft. I think it was 15 was in at Dallas Turner, or 16 was Dallas Turner, something like
I
that.
think it was 16,
Somewhere in there, yeah.
And so then after that, there was a run of defensive players. So I had the value right of where the edge rushers were going to be, but nobody knew that there was going to be that many offensive players taken off the board. This year is going to be a good mix, I think, and it's going to be fun to watch. Matter of fact, here, let's just look it up. Where was Jared Verse taken?
It looks like, not to derail here, but Terrion Arnold is going to be in Green Bay.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
next. That's next on one of our topics here.
Oh, is it? Is it? Okay, my bad.
Yeah, so Jared Verse was taken at 19 last year. 19. 2024.
I do kind of recall, and I'm going to see if I can find the article because I do recall, Eric, this, not the specifics, but kind of that it seems familiar where Holmes was saying he was trying to trade up, but it would make sense because he was saying he was trying to go for Terrion Arnold. And then he said once it started, just each pick was going, he's like, we might just be able to
sit and wait. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but
my
I don't think he
brain's
ever
not-
gave out a specific number.
Or yeah.
So it was 15 was Latu, 16 was Murphy, 17 was Turner, 18 was Mims, 19 was Verse. And then it was Fontenot, Robinson, Mitchell, Thomas, and then Arnold. So, yeah, he would have had to have gotten at least to 19. He wasn't. No one was. Rams weren't going to trade with us. All right. So a second ago, you were asking what was the question when you were talking about that segment? What was the question?
It was just more about quality over quantity.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to what we've been talking about today. Is in this draft, I think it only makes sense that you go after a few players. I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions only have 4 draft picks in this draft. I would not be surprised one bit. And they may be in the top 4 rounds. I just think it's a big waste every year, to take picks at the back end unless you're rebuilding a team. But for this team specifically, I mean, let's take a look at the depth chart for a second. Riley, you mentioned this a second ago. It's hard to make the roster, and it's going to be.
Yep.
Especially
Might
when
be
you bring
more
back
room
the same team.
Specificity with this exact roster. Yeah, they're looking at, we've got all these players and pieces in place. So does it just come down to draft night where everyone's trying to play cool? Like, man, we're good with any one of these 20 players. But once the picks start getting made and phones are ringing and emotions are going and adrenaline's going, and hopefully they can exploit another team.
So just to run it down real quick, right? You've got Aiden Hutchinson, Al-Quddin Muhammad. I would say that you're pretty solid there for your starter and your backup. And then you have a Lee McNeil who's injured. He won't be starting the season. He may not even get into the last third of the season if we're lucky. So you have Levi Onwuzurike, and then you have Roy Lopez as your main 2 starters and backups, and then Broderick Martin behind him. Then you have DJ Reader and Mekhi Wingo. Mekhi Wingo's injured, so he won't be starting, potentially till a little bit later. We've heard that things are pointing in the right direction for him, that he might be a camp participant and make it to week 1, but we'll just hold out hope at this point. So let's just say those 2 are gone. Miles Adams, DJ Reader, Levi, Roy Lopez, Broderick Martin. So you got 5 guys right now, and then you have 2 guys that could potentially be on IR. You're going to have to fill at least one of those spots, Aleem or Mekhi. You have to fill one, right, for depth, competition. You don't know what Broderick Martin is yet, so you have to fill that spot. So you could potentially add 1 defensive tackle. Makes sense. On the other side, the right defensive end, well, we heard that Josh Pascal is going to be more inside. So if he's not going to be on the outside, then that means Marcus Davenport is now your starter again this year. And then you have Pat O'Connor, who can go inside and outside, and Isaac Ukwu and Mitchell Agudi playing that side. Well, you definitely need a spot there. And that's where it's not going to be difficult to make the roster, where you're battling against Mitchell Agudi, Nate Lynn, Isaac Ukwu, Pat O'Connor. I think that those 4 players are going to be battling for the last spot on the roster. So 1 defensive end, 1 defensive tackle, or 1 defensive end, 1 defensive tackle can make this roster. Linebacker. I think that you can add 1 here. because you have Malcolm Rodriguez, Jack Campbell, Derek Barnes as your starters. Grant Stewart's not going anywhere. I'm sorry. Jack Campbell, Derek Barnes, Alex Anzalone as your starters. Malcolm Rodriguez is injured. Not sure when he's going to come back. You need to fill that spot. Well, you have Grant Stewart, Ezekiel Turner, Trevor Nowaski, Anthony Pittman, Gilbert, and Beauplan. I think for the linebackers, they'll probably carry 6 at least, and Malcolm could be on IR. So it's really 7, but one's going to be on IR. They can add a linebacker. So there's 3 positions on defense that can be added. Cornerback room. You got Terrion Arnold, DJ Reed as your starters. They're expecting Ennis Rakestraw to really take a big step forward. Matter of fact, speaking of this Brad Holmes press conference yesterday, if you took anything away from Ennis Rakestraw, they were hoping that he was going to play a lot last year. And so that tells you they're hoping he's going to play a lot this year, which means they may have less of an opportunity, or maybe it's less of a position of need for them to go after a corner. Maybe later in the draft, more of that best value available for a corner. So with Terrion Arnold, DJ Reed, Ennis Rakestraw, I think those are solid. But Khalil Dorsey, Stanley Thomas Oliver, and as your main backups, I think that there's a need there. There's a need, even though he doesn't draft for need. You could definitely add one for competition. And you've got Brian Branch, who can play, down in the nickel. You have Amik Robertson still. You have Avonte Maddox, who can play nickel, and he could play, the RCB too. So I think you could add one, but I would say that that's probably the last most important position on the defense to go after in this draft would be corner. I think that's the last out of 4 positions that I think that they could add. Corner would be the last. So then you go to the offense. Where do you have room here? An offensive lineman, potentially, right? If you're thinking future, like Brad Holmes said yesterday in the press conference. How about this? Let me throw this out there. This will be a video later on today. Brock Wright. Let's take a look at Brock Wright's contract later on today. Is there a potential out in his contract? Are the Lions potentially going to move off of him? Trade him? And bring in a new tight end? Why are they bringing in so many tight ends, in these pre-draft visits, combine visits, top 30 visits? They brought in Yaboa for competition. Shane Zielstra's back. They might be looking to save a couple bucks on Brock Wright. Maybe they move off. I think that that's a great possibility. No one's talking about it. No one's talking about Brock Wright being a potential move. And I think that it can be. So I think that they could add a tight end. They could add an offensive lineman. And that could be at center. And that could be at tackle or a tackle guard combo, someone that can play both. But that's it. Other than wide receiver, yeah, you could always add a wide receiver. But then again, I think that it takes having to move off of, one of your guys. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Tim Patrick are your starters. And beyond that, the Lions never really keep more than 5 wide receivers on the roster. So you have Khalif Raymond, Tom Kennedy, Ronnie Bell. They could absolutely add a wide receiver this year. Absolutely. So if I were to put all of these positions into perspective, I would say that, yes, there is 6 positions that you could add a football player. 6. And out of those 6, and where this draft is deep, where this draft is comfortable, where this draft has really good football players, 4 of them could probably be taken, and then it would be very risky to add the other 2 positions that you didn't take, depending on where you're at in the draft. They won't make the team, potentially. Like, I don't see Tim Patrick not making the team, And then, of course, I'm not even going to throw injuries into it. Like, that's just, you just don't know. And then given the fact of how many players we have on the roster right now, does anybody have a count? I haven't even looked recently.
Let me see if I can find that out.
Yeah, you'd have to go to Spotrac and go to the roster, and it should give you a number of how many are signed. So anyway, keep on going, Eric. You had a couple more points.
All right. The last one on this one is the Lions are pretty flexible when it comes to adhering with a trade value chart.
Wait, I'm sorry, Eric. Hold on. Sorry. I apologize.
Okay.
Brent Lighton said I missed safety. Purposely really didn't go over safety. I think that when you look at safety, Kirby and Brian, I mean, they're solid. You definitely not like if we're keeping Kirby, there's no reason to go after a high draft pick. But then again, it is kind of thin with Lauren Strickland, Eric Hallett, and Morris Norris. The question is, can Avante Maddox play any safety? Potentially. It is a quasi need, so I think you're right there. But I purposely didn't go after it because I think we're keeping Kirby. But if we're not keeping Kirby, we really don't need another safety if those two stay healthy. And the guys that filled in last year, I think they filled in admirably. But I think you're right from the perspective. Like I said, early in the season, I would love to add another safety to that room. But I would put that as one of the last positions that they're going to go after. Nick Emanawari would be a perfect addition to this team. Because of how much we play box safety, he would be perfect. But then again, that's not a first-round grade. That is that meat of the draft, 26 to 45. Nick is gone. So will we have an opportunity? I don't know. He's not a move-up player. I think he'll be available after 28, potentially. We'll find out this weekend. All right, so go ahead, Eric.
All right. The Lions are pretty flexible when it comes to adhering with a trade chart. While the Lions have a trade value chart, Holmes indicated they are not strictly bound by it and are willing to be flexible to make deals for players they value, contrasting with some teams that adhere rigidly to the point system. And Brad yesterday was talking about how some teams, if it's 1 point over on their chart, they're not making the deal. Some of them are absolute sticklers for those trade charts where he's a little bit more flexible.
Riley?
I was just waiting for Brad Holmes sometime in the press conference yesterday to just say, well, what we do here at Allen Park, a little thing called roster roulette, and I would have just lost my mind. But it's the same, it's the same thing. I was thinking of it obviously when, which is a great name for it. Obviously, I think everybody's kind of you visualize how these teams do it, but it's been on my mind so much, especially since the season ended, because then you start looking at really started with the Kirby Joseph trade talk, which, I can say again, I feel Will was the first one out on the front of that, just looking at not petitioning for him to be traded, but facing the reality. It's really hard to go 15-2 and not win the Super Bowl. Obviously it sucks to lose the playoffs, but you can't keep these guys together forever. So the window, while I still feel obviously it's wide open for the Lions and will be, you got to capitalize on these opportunities because something's got to give. There's change every year. But I thought I was expecting Brad Holmes to just come out and say, we've got ours. It's called roster roulette.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's never going to happen. He's never going to say that. Now, I do hear some bits and pieces once in a while. It's just kind of funny. You guys remember last year when I was talking about David Montgomery?
Sledgehammer legs.
The sledgehammer legs. And then after the game, Dan Campbell comes to the podium and says, man, he's just got these, I guess, sledgehammers. I'm like, how on earth does that happen? The same day I put it on, Twitter, talking about David Montgomery's sledgehammer legs. And then 4 hours later after the game, Dan Campbell says the same exact thing. I was laughing, but it was just kind of like, man, did he see my tweet? Like, did he really see it?
He's probably just scrolling Twitter and then, all right, coach, we're ready for you. All right, I'm heading in.
Something tells me Dan doesn't scroll Twitter.
Yeah.
All right, what else do we have? Do you have anything more on that, on that, the takeaways?
Nope, that was it.
All right, so let me go through some of mine, and we're getting up against time here. So my little summary yesterday, obviously, the big question yesterday was, did Brad kind of give away the draft plan, or did he kind of give away that he's maybe not as high on the edge rusher, defensive end? I keep saying edge rusher, defensive end position. He was asked a question at the very end where they said, what do you view I think the question was similar to this. What do you view, or how do you view the edge, position right now? And he said, the same as it was at the combine. So he's not made, any headway as to how he feels for that position being a bigger need now than it was before. And before, he really didn't think it was much of a need at all. But at the same time, he said, of course we would love to add, multiple guys to that room. We would love to have, top tier guys everywhere, on that roster, but especially that position. And if you remember, I pointed out last year at one point we had Marcus Davenport, Aiden Hutchinson, and Z, and they were all rated in the top 30 of edge before the season. So at one point we had 3 of the top 30 edge rushers already on the team. And people are over here losing their minds saying that we need to add edge. Well, if they had just stayed healthy, we wouldn't have had Z, but if they had just stayed healthy, we had at least 2 of the top 30. So, we were already doing it. And it's very, rare that you have a team that has 2 top 32 anything on a roster, especially at that position. Top defensive ends don't exist. There's maybe 5 in this league that you can say are truly elite and rare athletes. Maybe 5. They just don't exist. So how are you going to be able to get 2 on a roster when only 5 exist? It's not possible. That's why you have to groom rookies. So his focus on the edge rusher position, I think that the Lions are actively seeking to bolster that pass rush in that position with not necessarily just getting after the quarterback, but being able to stack, shed, set the edge, and control the run game and the quarterback and allow the rest of the defense to do what they're supposed to do. I think Brad Holmes maybe emphasizing a need is not what he's going to do, but he does emphasize every team would love to have multiple high-end edge rushers. He kind of gave us the feeling that it wasn't big on his mind. Now, is that Brad Holmes kind of playing the smoke and mirrors game? I will say this. I would, if you go back and listen to every pre-draft press conference, combine press conference, postseason press conference, he says the same thing in every one before that draft. And I don't mean the same thing, but he sticks to the same messaging.
He tells you what he's going to do. Yeah.
He tells you exactly what's on his mind. He tells you exactly what he's going to do. And then in that draft, everyone's confused, what happened? No, he literally just told you for 3 months what's going to happen. So if I took anything away from this, man, it would tell me at the end of the season, he didn't say it was a problem. At the combine, he didn't say it was a problem. And yesterday, he didn't say it was a problem. That would tell me at the draft, that's not high on his list. So that's where the headlines come out yesterday, multiple videos by a lot of people coming out. Did he kind of give up his draft plan? Did he expose that maybe he's really not going to go after an edge? This is the other thing that I will say. I pay attention to a lot of different, articles over the years. And since I've been talking repeatedly over the last 2.5, 3 seasons now about Brad Holmes kind of giving up the draft plan every year by just being honest in his press conferences. And if you just kind of follow along, read through the tea leaves, and pay attention to a little bit of body psychology and facial expressions, that you can kind of figure out what he's going to do. And now I'm starting to see more writers of the local media saying the same thing. Now, whether they caught wind of it, through this channel or not, I don't know, but I'm glad that other people are starting to see it. But at the same time, I don't know if I wanted everybody to see that, because now everyone else is going to pay attention to it. That may not be a good thing. He did say he has a commitment to the offensive line and the trenches overall, that is the cornerstone of this team. It is the cornerstone of the Lions strategy. Retaining, critical roles in the team's identity and performance going forward, it starts in the trenches. It's both sides of the football, but I think the offensive side of the football more over than the defensive side. But I think that this is a year where we have an opportunity to grab some really good football players on the defensive side of the football. Defensive tackle depth, again, there is growing consensus that the Lions may look to strengthen their defensive tackle position, given the injury to Ali McNeil, giving the depth that we really don't have behind him other than Levi, which Levi is a crapshoot. would you guys agree or disagree, Eric, that Levi's kind of a crapshoot this year?
Yeah, whether he's, I think this is a prove it year for him. It really, really, really is.
I would agree for sure too, because I know Brad Holmes, they were elated at the number they got him back at. It was an incentive for Levi. I might as well just stay here, take a little bit less. But if he has a great year, he's already in the system, then it will, pay off for him. So yes, I would agree.
I would say it's a crapshoot for him because he's had one good season. And honestly, Levi last year was a top 15, top 16 rated defensive tackle for his pressures and getting into the backfield. And that's, I mean, after battling these back injuries, right? And I think now he has an opportunity to expand upon that. And I hope that he just stays healthy enough to do it, because I think the Lions are in a good position that if he stays healthy, these offensive lines that we're going to go up against are going to be in a bad way. I am concerned about the level of competition that the Lions have this year. I will say that every year now we've had good, solid schedules. This year's different. Even after we went, to the NFC Championship game, I don't think that our schedule last year was that bad. I really don't. This year is bad. Like it's very tough. We're going up against some of the elite offensive lines and defensive lines. I don't care about the rest of the football players, honestly. I could care less about the quarterbacks and the wide receivers and the running backs. It's the interior in the trenches that I care about first, because that's where you're going to win the football game against some of these better football teams. It's a war of attrition, and you have to stay healthy, and you have to have enough endurance to get through these games in the trenches. So for me, I think that this is where the Lions need to take that approach that, man, we really need to stiffen up. And I hope and I'm expecting that they're going to stay deeper on both sides of the football, but especially the defense. They're going to stay deeper in that defensive line group this year. They may add one more than what they did last year. Holmes' best player approach, best player available approach. I think I said this earlier. I think it is now BVA, not BPA. Best value available in this draft, simply because the first round grades potentially will be gone before pick 28. I don't see, I mean, you might have one or two that are on Brad's board that slip to 28 possibly, and then he may just stay and pick. But then again, with how deep it is at the defensive line and defensive edge and a couple of other positions, I'm going to repeat myself and say that there's going to be a log jam in front of them, and trading back and getting that value, not only for this year, but for the future, as Brad Holmes stated in his press conference, that the future is the most important, that drafting these players is for the future. It's for now, but it's also the future that's the most important. He also mentioned trading back. You heard him say it not once, but 2 or 3 times in yesterday's press conference, that maybe they trade back. Did either of you hear him say trade forward? Do you remember?
I don't.
Does anybody in the chat remember Brad saying trading forward yesterday? What was that?
My ice maker.
I don't remember him saying trading forward at all.
No, I think he said he's it was trading back and no interest at 28.
Like he was just talking to talk, like Trey says, specificity. Yeah, it's not really there, but when he talks about draft strategy a little bit yesterday, and he's asked the questions, about the quantity versus the quality, or does it help to remain, cheaper right now versus more expensive contracts? And I'm sure he probably mentioned something about moving forward. You don't know, maybe we move forward, but he's saying moving back a few times to me tells me that I think he thinks the value is going to be there. And just like I've outlined before, maybe he's got 8 guys on his board and he's at 28 and he can move back to 34, so you still have 8 guys on your board and there's 8 picks between 28 and 34 or whatever. You're going to be able to get one of them. And it doesn't matter which one you get, as long as you get one of them. Hell, maybe 2 of them will be there. And maybe he trades back and then trades back up and you got 2 picks in a row. Back-to-back picks. I could see that happening. he might go all out and go all back in. Wide receiver competition. Brad mentioned getting younger at the wide receiver position. You remember him saying that yesterday? Wanting to stay younger?
Yep.
So aren't we pretty young? J-Mo's only in his 4th year, right? Mon Razin is 4th year, 5th year, 5th year.
Yep.
21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 5th year. J-Mo's in his 4th year. Those guys are pretty young. I don't understand why we have to get younger.
Yeah, Tim Patrick's the only older wide receiver we
I mean,
have.
I would say Khalif Raymond's a veteran too. He's been around for at least 7 seasons, right? I mean, TK85's been around for like 5 seasons now. But
15.
that guy. I would say if he's thinking about getting younger, that means he's looking at adding a wide receiver. And that's why potentially moving off of J-Mo. Well, I'll put it out there, man. Whether it's Kirby or J-Mo, one of them may have to go. In the comments and in the chat, you tell me below. If you had to make a deal for Kirby or J-Mo, which one are you keeping and why? For me personally, I would say you keep Kirby, you trade J-Mo, you move up with that pick, and you get the next wide receiver of the future. Whether that's Golden, Namika Egbuka, or Bond, or whomever, right? Bond you can get later, but you get one of those guys earlier in the draft process that can affect this team in a positive way. You don't lose the production. Brad said with the edge rushers, we'd like to have 3 or 4 high-end edge rushers. He said with the offensive line, quote, it's always going to be at the forefront. Defensive tackle, he said, quote, we're getting kind of heavy on the defensive line. Wide receiver, quote, we would love to bring in some competition, particularly some youth. His philosophy is always best player available. My philosophy now is best value for this draft. This next week is going to be fun. I'll be getting at some things this weekend. I apologize. I've got so much going on now that we're going to be in Green Bay for the draft, just trying to get ready and trying to make sure that we're as ready as we can be, because it is going to be, I think, a little bit of shock and awe syndrome once we do get there and try to figure out what we're doing, when we're doing it, how we're doing it. And it's going to be a big undertaking for our first time being credentialed at the NFL draft. So stick with us. Of course, we're going to have a lot of shows coming at you next week. I think Monday is the last show before we leave. It's doubtful we do anything on Tuesday. It's even doubtful we do anything on Monday. But we're going to plan for it, at least right now. This weekend, I'm going to plan to come in and do a few things. Don't forget, man, share these raffles, right? Get in on these raffles. We got some really good products in there. Look, we've given away, I just did my taxes, right? I've given away last year $10,000 worth of stuff. 10 grand worth of stuff on this channel last year. And a lot of that is bought and paid for through channel earnings, donations, raffles, and it goes right back out to the fan. That's what we're all about. This is a fan channel. This is your channel. And we're trying to build something for the Rockhound Cancer Foundation and multiple other channels. I got some other crazy big news coming up soon. And you're going to be hopefully excited about it. But the plan is coming to fruition. I have to keep this last bit a secret. But get with us next week. Get into this. Share the fact that we're going to be live. Get everybody into the draft night and enjoy it, because there's going to be some pop-up giveaways for Aiden jerseys. We've got raffles for the new Gibbs jersey, signed football helmets by Kirby Joseph, and mini helmets. 2 tickets that we're trying to give away to opening day. Got to hit 10,000 to do it, though. That is the kicker. And I might even double it up. I might even give away a 4-pack. So, all right, final 30 to you, Riley, and then Eric.
Yeah, that's all my thoughts were there even this morning. I thought, hey, what am I going to say when Will hits me with my final 30? Help us get to 10,000. love this channel, love this community. And I know, Will, you said, and you're being humble and genuine about it, because of course you'll look back next year and think, if we knew back then what we know now, how things would be done differently. But I can't think of a better set of people, Will and Eric, to be there representing Rocked On Detroit Lions. I'm so damn excited for the draft. I'm more excited than I feel like I would be if the Lions had a top 5 pick. But I can't wait for next week. It's going to be awesome, and I can't wait for the week of shows and the great work I know that we are going to do as a team. And thank you, everybody, for spending time with us and being here with us every morning.
Awesome. All right, Eric.
Okay, one topic we didn't get to talk about real quick was that Terrion Arnold is going to be there on day 2 on Friday, announcing all of the Lions picks for round 2 and round 3. They're going to have a bunch of Packer legends and people that went to school in Wisconsin or were former Packers doing a lot of the announcements on day 2 and 3, or on day 2 for rounds 2 and 3. But for the Lions, any picks that we get, it's going to be Terrion Arnold there giving his he's giving us the picks on day 2. So hopefully I get to meet him. That'd be kind of cool.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm messaging him right now to see if we can work something out.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can.
I'm guessing one of those PR people from the email.
No.
Oh, okay.
Terrion directly.
Oh, okay.
All right. So, yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Monday is the plan, but I should be in throughout the weekend. I've got my final mock draft, my final draft take, my first round grades. It's all going to come out this weekend. And then, of course, any other news as we dig in my heels and make some phone calls. We'll see what we find out for information. There's not going to be a ton, but we're going to find out everything that we can and have some fun with it. So appreciate you guys. Don't forget, raffle tickets, they're pinned in the message. I'll pin it in the comments afterwards. If you have any questions, just email me. You can hit the mailbag at rockdown.com or whatever you like. So we'll see you guys later. Go Detroit Lions. Catch you in the next one.
Yeah, 1 2 1 2. 1 2 1 2. Mic check. Hey, can y'all hear me out there? Against all odds. 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 Against all odds.